we should talk about the fruit vegetable piece, because I think this is what people they're misled on. And you still go into Whole Foods and you'll see the woman, she's got her pretty blonde hair and her ponytail, and she's got her Lululemon pants on and whatever, like fancy footwear, and her Louis Vuitton purse, and she's just looking at all the apples, and she's like, look at this beautiful apple. And it's either conventional, which should be labeled chemical. I will not rest on this topic until it freaking says what it really is, which is chemical. Like, conventional strawberries, $2.99 a pound. Organic strawberries, $4.99. It's like, stop calling it conventional. It's chemical. Okay. So anyway, she picks up the apple because she heard if she eats an apple a day, it keeps the doctor away. So then she takes the apple home. And the reality is, within the last 100 years, they've only been able to track this since like the 1920s, maybe the 1940s. But essentially, depending on what paper you look at, you've lost 25 up to 80% of all vitamin and mineral content. This is among apples, this is broccoli, this is carrots, this is potatoes, this is onions, this is every, quote, produce out there. It's like a minimum 20% nutrient loss. And we could pull up these tables if you think we should, but the long story short is, even in the last 100 years, if you were a vegetarian plant-based hippie in the 70s versus a plant-based hippie in the 2020s, you are getting 50% less on average nutrition than you got in the 70s. That's frightening.
It's an interesting concept. This guy, Sadhguru, was on Rogan's podcast recently and was talking about this as well. This notion of soil. Man, I've tried to talk about soil a lot on my podcast, and it's one of the hardest things to get people excited about. It's hard to put soil in a bikini or lather it up in baby oil and make it look super sexy. Like, I can't get people excited about soil and dirt for the life of me. But I think it's a critically important concept that, and I love your title. I think it's brilliant. Like, this is a really dangerous time to be a vegan or vegetarian. I think that even before we talk about the loss of nutrients in these foods because of the depletion of the soil, let's also talk about the fact that many of these nutrients are less bioavailable at baseline. So for instance, if you're eating like almonds, thinking that you're going to get magnesium, that magnesium is very poorly bioavailable in the almonds because of phytic acid and oxalates. So other minerals in things like grains or beans, whether it's oats, whether it's wheat, like these, especially all the seeds, it's very poorly bioavailable because of these big molecules that chelate it. But even with that in mind, so we start from a place where it's hard to get minerals from seeds being seeds, nuts, grains, and beans. Maybe you can get some minerals from a plant leaf. Your listeners will know, and my listeners will always know that, leaves are not something I'm a huge fan of because of all the other attendant problems that they have. In an absolute survival situation, maybe you can get a few minerals or vitamins and a few paltry calories from a leaf, along with the digestive enzyme inhibitors, which are also going to inhibit your ability to metabolize and absorb the nutrients from these leaves. So at baseline, they're very poorly nutrient available foods. And then take that in conjunction with the fact that we've been farming in an abysmal way. I mean, most farming is abysmal in and of itself for thousands of generations now, or at least hundreds of generations. I think thousands would be an accurate estimate if we're saying that farming began 10 to 15,000 years ago. So it's really pretty scary when you think about the way that the soil works. The best thing I could say to make soil interesting to people is it's teeming with life. It has a microbiome. The soil is alive. And when you're growing a crop in there and you're monocropping on a soil, you're pulling nutrients out. And if you don't put them back in with an animal input, which is absolutely required, you're going to get less and less nutrient-rich foods. And so you can either use an organic input like an animal, which is the way it's happened evolutionarily, because animals and plants always coexisted. Animals pooped and peed on the ground, and there's forests and jungles, and nobody was actually farming. And even if there was farming, animals would come and poop and pee in the farm, maybe, or not. But if you don't do that, you have to use synthetic fertilizers to put inputs back in, but that's never as good. We always know that. And so the soil becomes less and less nutrient rich. And then you have a real problem here, because those foods are very, very poor. They're poor at baseline, and then they're even more depleted because of the way we've been farming for so long.
Man, that's an incredible point. So I'm just going to restate it for people. Like, you're already coming in as spinach and kale and almonds and freaking tomatoes being not the best for you. Now, the not the best things for you to begin with, we didn't even get into the oxalates and the lectins and the things that disturb the gut barrier and the nightshades that can irritate your joints and that kind of thing. We didn't even get into that part. So add all that on there, and then now you take it and you make it 50 to 80% less nutritious than it was 50 to 100 years ago. You've got a recipe for disaster. And when you look at the side effects of all these nutrient deficiencies, now you get into the anxiety, you get into depression, you get into chronic fatigue, because now you just don't have enough nutrients. You're not getting enough CoQ10 like you're going to get from, what would you say the richest source is in the animal-based world of CoQ10? Would it be heart or?
Heart.
Okay. Makes sense, right? CoQ10 is good for the heart. How interesting that it's in the heart.
Yeah. Heart, yeah.
Okay, so you take the most bioavailable nutrient you could get from a veggie, and you cannot even compare it to the organ, which is the heart, in terms of the nutrient density. And so
I don't even know if coenzyme Q10 occurs in the plant kingdom, Evan. Does it?
I don't even know. There's probably some plant-based form. Let's see.
I doubt it. I don't even think you can get. That's one of those nutrients that only occurs in animal foods. This is the very interesting inequality between plant and animal foods, that there are so many nutrients that occur only in any appreciable quantity in animal foods. And coenzyme Q10 is a big one. Also creatine, carnitine, choline, anserine, taurine, the list goes on and on.
Oh, you're going to love this. Here was a paper on this right here. It was just a PubMed paper, coenzyme Q10 production in plants. Some of your favorite sources: soybean, peanuts, corn, and olive. So they're making vegan CoQ10 now.
I'd love to see how much is actually in there, because I don't think it's anything near what you're going to get in animal food. And I'm going to bet it's either a different form, because there are B12 analogs in plant foods that don't actually work like B12 or could block B12 function in the human body. And then there are also other forms of many nutrients in plants which are not very bioavailable.
Precisely. Yeah, I don't even know if this goes into that in terms of, let's see, I'll do a Control F for soybean. Yeah, so it goes into the concentration here. This is actually pretty cool. I'm glad we're getting a little geeky now. So CoQ10 in terms of nutrient levels, it's showing, all right, so where's the heart? You know what I mean? Okay, here we go. We actually have heart on here. So they're saying milligrams per kilogram. Heart is smoking it. And then, of course, liver is really high up there too, which is awesome. Even muscle is surprising. I mean, I knew liver and heart are great, but I'm surprised even muscle's still on the list here. And then you compare it. Now they're saying that in soybean, they're saying 54 milligrams per kilogram, all the way up to 280. They're showing that it would beat heart. That sounds crazy.
If you ate a kilogram of soybeans.
How much is a kilogram? I mean, that's got to be
2.2 pounds.
Isn't it 2.2?
Yeah, 2.2 pounds. So I mean, I don't think anybody's going to eat that many soybeans. And then you have all the other problems with soybeans, like the phytic acid and.
This is not even this is not even fair without a visual depiction. Like, show me how much liver I'd have to eat versus how much freaking soybean I'd have to eat. Like, I need.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple here. Nobody's going to eat grape seeds. Nobody's going to eat that many olives. So there's essentially zero sources of any appreciable amounts of coenzyme Q10. Oh, these are oils, actually. These are plant oils, Evan. Do you see that? It says oils.
Where? Oh, right here.
Plant oil. That's soybean oil. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So you'd have to have a kilogram of soybean oil, which you and I both know what would happen if you had a kilogram of soybean oil.
Oh, what do you think would happen? I think I would have diarrhea for starters.
You'd have diarrhea, but this is one of the seed oils that I'm not a fan of at all, right? Soybean oil is very high in linoleic acid, which is going to be a major problem. All of these linoleic acid molecules are going to get incorporated into your cell membranes, into the mitochondrial membranes, into cardiolipin in the mitochondrial membrane. And that's going to be a big problem. So this, I think, is at the root of many of the issues that people find with mitochondrial dysfunction long-term, diabetes, insulin resistance. Basically, the problems with breaking fat cells, I think, have to do with excess linoleic acid. So this is not even soybeans. This is soybean oil.
My God.
So they're saying you can, because coenzyme Q10 is fat soluble. So you'd have to eat all of these oils. Yeah. It's not, this chart is not easy to read, but it says oils, and it says nuts here, and the nuts are very low. There's essentially none. But soybean oil is, of course, concentrated from soybeans. So you'd have to have a kilogram of soybean oil. I'd rather have, a kilogram or half a kilogram of heart.